Non-technical founders stop learning how to code. People are also learning how to code because of the perception in the tech entrepreneurial realm that in order to start a company you need to write code. Often driven by necessity, when a non-technical person cannot find a developer, she or he resorts to learning how to code. This notion is driving floods of aspiring entrepreneurs to take up a new learning venture. That's all well and good for you if you want to learn to code. But I'm telling you right now, I stopped a long time ago. The experience factor required in this arena is way beyond worth learning for anything but small stuff. IMO. Great article. The debate continues. Ha ha. LOL, I think the only reason there is a debate is because people don't accept the fact that if they don't already know how to code, and you're over the age of 25 or so, you're wasting time and should get a technical co-founder or hire it out through a CTO or something, if you're looking at building something technically complex. Anything requiring over a WordPress site or something simple, should be left to those who already know how to do it, unless you have years under your belt already. If you don't have those years, most opportunities will pass you by without a partner or cash to make it happen. Those with business savvy can provide ample value elsewhere. Just my opinion lol. Learn to code, don't learn to code. I couldn't give a shit what people want to do with their time. That's their own choice and it's none of my business. But from a personal level, as a tech founder, I just have to say that sometimes not knowing how to code makes me feel like I'm walking around without an arm or something. It gets frustrating when I need to get things done. But don't take what I said the wrong way, learning to code still doesn't guarantee that the frustration will be removed. I learned math and I still get annoyed when I have to do it. It's just an observation. Funny, and I was just contemplating learning PHP today. There's an article for every opinion and side. In my experience, this has been entirely true. All of my techie business friends are focused on their own company and not one is looking to develop some non-technical person's ideas. I think the technical co-founder is somewhat like a unicorn or Santa, either they don't exist or only few have seen them. As long as you're not looking to develop some super-coded service or platform, but just looking to make small apps or something, then you should be fine just outsourcing. Something that hasn't really been mentioned in this ongoing debate, is that technical founders in the tech world are the ones that are bringing in the big bucks with their companies. Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Facebook all wouldn't have been possible without guys behind it who were intimately passionate about software and their products. Video equals YouTube, Bijkf 0 jars. VE equals Bijkf 0 jars or video, agreed. My advice, learn enough so you don't get ripped off. Not everybody will be able to pick up on coding. It's hard work. The learning curve to learn and actually be able to build stuff is fairly steep, and outsourcing your project oftentimes makes the best sense. Advantages and disadvantages to both, however. P.S. Here's a good read about to build my own Fastlane app. Maybe it'll help someone. Could Jobs code? Sometimes I wonder whether the looking for a tech co-founder stuff is a cover for not having a need that the presumed founder is ready to fill. They want someone who's been out programming as a job for years who can tell them what the sticking points are in the industry. Or maybe not. I don't really know. Is it that they simply don't want to pay to hire someone? I think it could very easily become that mythical unicorn that you chase that prevents you from ever really knuckling down. Eventually you'll have to assemble a team to grow past a certain point and detach the rewards from your time, so at some point you have to let go of your own coding skills. I think it's no different than any industry. You have to know a lot about the industry in general so that you can steer the ship, But knowing how to do every little thing yourself is only really relevant when bootstrapping. I think somebody does not waste time learning how to code. I think somebody would waste time reading tons of articles about whether he should learn how to code or not. This is an article on the don't learn how to code side of the argument, and after reading that, you might not want to learn how to code anymore and quit your Udacity course. Weeks go by, maybe even months, and you decide to read a book. It's Paul Graham's, and it's called Hackers and Painters. Wow! We live in a technical era and it would be f-king stupid to not learn how to code. I know I am a noob. I know I don't know anything about it. But in reality I am not doing much in building a business now anyway, so why not learn some code? There we go. Dive into Python. This time I stick to it. Or should I learn JavaScript? It seems to be the scripting language of the future. Maybe in combination with HTML5, damn, then I should also learn CSS. But wait, I want to make applications. What do I need for that? Back-end? Front-end? I think. Let's read some articles about that. Okay, back-end it is. We have chosen, not sure why, here too where lots of pros and cons to be found between back and front. Now we only have to pick language. We have Python. We have C. We have Objective-C. That's for the Mac users. I am not sure if I want to build for Android or Apple. Damn. Let's read some articles. Okay. We go for Android. Python. It is ... smart choice. MIT uses it in their introduction to computer science. But I am creative, a very creative person. Should I pick Ruby? If everybody is studying Python, wouldn't it be better to learn a different language? PHP seems nice. Or just plain old C perhaps? COBOL, what's that? And what's Perl? Damn, back to the articles. Until you find your next don't learn how to code article. All tired of doing all the research, you decide to cut the crap and stop coding. You don't need it anyhow to become an entrepreneur, until you read Delivering Happiness, to find out that even Tony was a programmer before he got his billions with Zappos. This is the time waster, I believe. Not so much the learning how to program, but the analysis if one should learn how to program or not, using a medium with a sea of information that will only lead to paralysis. Make up your mind and learn how to think on your own. What's your goal and what do you need? If you feel it's coding, learn it. Nobody can make a life decision like that for you. Yes, it's a life decision, 10k hours, it will be demanding. But maybe you are missing out by not learning it, who knows? Only you. Reading an article might help, until you get paralyzed by analyses and quit taking action at all. Or worse, fake the action. I am reading so I am taking action. To say that you can't become an expert after the age of 25 and that this somebody would waste their time, I disagree. Not because I am learning how to code, I am not, would be a complete time waster for me, but because it's way too much of a generalization. Life can't be answered by reading a book or a map. Watched The Hobbit yesterday. Might be a bit influenced by Gandalf here. If you have the strong feeling you want to learn how to code, then nobody should stop you from doing it. If you come to the conclusion it would be a waste of time, then stop thinking about it. Move on. Forever. Until you read your next article. I do think, after talking with so many people about it, that it's a bad choice to learn how to code only to become an entrepreneur. And that's what this article explains well. But, on the other hand, when is it ever a good time to do something just as a means to an end? Never. So should I learn to code or go to college instead? Groove. Maybe you should read an article about it. I have no desire to learn how to code. That's why I'm looking at working with a startup tech accelerator, trying to become wealthy by the internet or apps, and not knowing a damn thing about code or technology is laughable. Likewise, Let me suggest that you don't know a damn thing about mathematics or finance when you try to manage your millionaire empire, smiley eel. Reading your book for the first time went a bit like this: rentals. Can't see how I can make that work for me. Content. Write a book. Cool. Selling my content seems awesome. Let's do that. All event. After that, I thought ... and so software. Cool. Learning how to program seems like the way to go. Distribution? Don't have any money. Can't build my own store. Software does seem to be the most appealing. It hit you the hardest. Problem solving by building a great app. Entry level is low but not too low. Programming is hard, and it should be a process, not an event. Because you could learn to program from home. Control. Yep. Scale. Most differently. Time. You are building the product, you can set yourself loose from the equation. In all honesty, I don't find it weird at all that people that read books like the FLM want to learn how to program. Everything you read about entrepreneurship nowadays is about software. Rentals. You can rent out real estate, permission to use your patents, play your songs, etc. Your investment is the effort and cost to product or acquire the product being rented, and then you can collect rental payments without doing a lot of extra work. Software. If you put something up online, you implicit get the leverage of having it available all over the world, 24/7. Things that are too niche to work on a local level can be big successes with a global audience. Content. When you write a book, create a CD, etc., you can make a lot of money selling your content. Again, the time investment is paid up front and then you can profit from the same product for a long time. Distribution systems. If you create a system that others use to make money, you can make a lot of money. This includes storefront that wholesalers use, for example, Apple's App Store, franchise creators, etc. Of course, the argument to that would be that you don't need to know anything about mathematics or finance, you'll just hire someone who does. I'm just going to go through life not knowing anything and I'm going to be super successful, smiley eel. I'm a little familiar with the debate that raged on in an earlier thread about this. Are you saying that I need to learn everything there is to learn about coding a robust website in order for that business to be successful? If so, do I then need to do the actual coding? These are sincere questions. It's important to research the technology that will be involved, and I can understand having some basic knowledge of coding so you know what you want and how you want it done, and to know if a programmer is doing it the way you want. When I stated that I have no desire to learn how to code, that's the truth. I don't, but I know I will need at least some basic understanding. The recent news about Avis buying Zipcar for $500 million was amazing and inspiring. Here's a snippet that raised more questions than it answered. They obviously needed money to lease the initial cars and seemingly to have the reservation and car security technology developed. Did these women know how to do that, or did they just have some basic understanding of the technology available and what needed to be done and hired out that work? Amen. Like Paul Graham said in one article, how do you spot a good coder when you don't know anything about it? How do you hire people in this field if you don't know anything about it? How do you have a technical co-founder if you can't judge what a good or bad technical co-founder is? And to all the people always using the Steve Jobs example, Jobs was way more into tech than people make him. He was not just a marketing sales guy blah blah, he knew his stuff up into the smallest details on the technical side. Most recruiters or headhunters do a pretty good job at Silicon Valley doing just that. You don't need to learn how to program to detect a good programmer. How do you spot a good coder when you don't know anything about it? Okay, now give me the quote where he says, literally, that you should learn to program. There are lots of ways you can learn about the tech world, without being a programmer. But if you want to spend your next 10 years into becoming a ninja programmer, all the luck to you. I am pretty sure a lot of things that you need to become a successful entrepreneur are not being taught in your house learning how to code. But the question wasn't whether he was merely into tech, was it? Unless someone who knows more about jobs can chime in, he seems like a great example of consistently knowing just enough or even much more than just enough without really being elite at any one technical thing. I think of it like, if you want to make a biz selling pies, you better know a whole hell of a lot about the process of creating and selling pies. The whole process, from raw materials to the baking to distribution to marketing, etc. Know enough that if you had all the time in the world you could go through all the steps yourself and have sold a half-decent pie at the end. But then if you're delaying starting your business because you need to learn to become an expert baker, you're probably wasting your time. I don't think learning anything in itself is a waste of time, only when the learning becomes a way of putting off what you need to do. This is how I think about it too. If you are in the pie business, you better know a lot about pies. On the other hand, this might be completely untrue. Tony Heish, from Zappos, knew nothing about shoes or e-commerce. He just made it work, with a great team. I start to believe, maybe completely wrong, that entrepreneurship is way more of a team sport than most books make it to be. So, maybe you know a ton about marketing the pie, selling the pie and getting tons of customers, while your buddy knows everything about baking them. Focus on your strengths. I have my doubts about people starting to learn how to program because they read an inspirational book like The Fast Lane Millionaire. Why? Because most programmers just get really good at it by, dare I say it, loving programming a whole lot. They spend hours and hours honing their craft. Many of them have done this for over 10 years. Now, somebody reads a book about entrepreneurship and reads the inspiring story about PayPal. Programming does seem like a logical step. But is this somebody doing it for the love of programming? Or for the love of entrepreneurship? Or just, dare I say it, because he thinks he will make a ton of money by becoming a very good programmer? Although I disagreed with a previous writer who said that above 25 it's a waste of time. I disagree when this person really wants to learn it, because of programming. I agree, if it's because he read in a book that you can become really rich with learning how to program. Since this is a guide to millions, a lot of people come to this site with the dream or goal to become really rich. I might come to the wrong conclusion by saying that most will learn programming for the wrong reasons equals making lots of money and therefore will fail, but I do believe it's true. There are many different angles on the topic. You have the typical comparison of knowing absolutely no code versus being a Google-worthy programmer. There is an in-between. You don't have to know how to program in every language there is, but knowing something is better than knowing nothing. On the flip side, sometimes it is better to just farm it off to somebody else. If you have plenty of money to fund other programmers, then by all means let the cash fly and get the program you wanted, but don't complain about how much it cost you since you don't truly understand what you're getting. I chose to learn programming because I like to tinker and problem solve. I enjoy doing things myself, more as a personal challenge to see if I can complete a challenging task. As a young man, I have more time that I can invest than I do large sums of money, so I operate accordingly. Because of this I can make a better decision as to whether or not I should pay a guy $500 to install WordPress, or if that theme I'm looking at is really worth a shit, or if my website is down because of hosting or something else versus someone that knows nothing about these things. There is no clear-cut answer saying all entrepreneurs who want to be successful with anything internet-related has to be able to code their own web apps. Ultimately, just like any other decision you make, you need to ask yourself, am I really going to benefit from this, and weigh the pros and cons. If it would take you years to learn to run a basic website, then you're better off finding people that can do that for you. Edit. One last thing to mention. In my career, I've always enjoyed my time under bosses who had programming experience versus those that did not. The ones that did not always made life very stressful by making unreasonable demands, only caring about time frames, and they never appreciated any quality of work. Therefore most of their projects had the lowest common quality. I agree with Skies. There are few stories when people started learning new skills at their late stage of life and still made big impact. It is how you look into it. My personal story is, I am from healthcare background with tons of ideas which involve interfacing both software technologies and health science side. So every time I want to validate an idea I have to keep hiring a programmer. And boy, a good programmer is not cheap. Some of the best programmers make 3x 5x of what I make. So the only way I can test lots of ideas is by learning some programming. Initially I had all the excuses not to learn programming. I have no time, I am old, I cannot find good resources etc. etc. But as time passes by I feel it is absolutely necessary for me. Hell, it will take me a long time to become a proficient programmer. But I see learning programming has few advantages. Mostly are: 1. As I grow older, it will help my memory muscles stay fit. 2. I will have realistic idea what features will take how much time and resources to develop. 3. When I will be hiring a programmer, I can go his or her GitHub profile page and Stack Overflow profile page, see their quality of work or contribution to the community. 4. The most important thing is that when you think of developing a prototype you think of both sides of the table rather than getting pigeonholed into a single field of thought. However, these are my personal observations. So take it with a grain of salt. One more big advantage is you can work from any part of the world and deliver your project to a client on other side of planet. Never in the history our ancestors have such a work privilege. Heck, even most of the today's jobs involve showing up at US workplace by 8:00 a.m. Derek Sivers agrees with me. Every time I see this debate, all I see are clashing personalities and zero correct answers. If you want full control over your venture, then you must know the bare bones of your enterprise. All of it. Have a website? Know what is making the website work, even if it's just the WordPress thesis theme. Don't rely on the bookkeeper to know your finances, know them yourself. He or she might manage them, but you gotta be able to know how to do it yourself in case something happens to him or her. Same with coding. If you can't build your software, that's fine. But if you can't fix your software, or explain to someone else how it works, then there's a problem. If you don't really care about how much control you have, then outsource everything and take a hefty cut to your paycheck. 4-hour work week, baby. I agree with this 100%, and it's what I was trying to convey in my post. Mainly this quote from that article: you don't need to become an expert, just know the basics, so you're not helpless. I'm not saying everyone should devote years to becoming an expert programmer, but to not even know how to deploy a basic WordPress install on a shared host is something that can be learned in an hour and has a ton of value. The king has spoken. Or end discussion here. I still believe that if anyone is dithering, hemming and hawing about whether or not they should learn programming, they have no business developing a product or service that is dependent on programming. Of course, non-technical people can still do well with businesses that depend on technology to some degree, but I bet that is because they are resourceful in different ways and I imagine are not wasting a second anguishing about whether or not they need to learn programming in the first place. The people who need to be convinced to figure this stuff out, whether it's basic scripting or hosting or database concepts, are not going to be any good at figuring this stuff out. Paul Graham said the number one quality he looks for in a company founder is resourcefulness. From that, we can infer that lack of resourcefulness is the number one quality of the people who never had a chance in the first place. I think, can someone tell me whether or not I should learn programming before I build my internet business? And can someone tell me what internet business I should start? Are indicators of the same characteristic. Look at dart and save time, headache. Ha wow, this is an old post. I'm so glad I never learned to code. So glad I can do basic coding myself. I'm so glad I learned to code. I think the problem stems from the fact that, for a non-techie person, when you mention the word code, the first thing that flashes in their head is all the coding mumble-jumble you see on Matrix. Code can be in many shapes and forms, and, for what 90% of startup entrepreneurs on this site require is just something basic like a website, e-commerce, etc. For that, you do need to spend a lot of time learning how to code. There are literally hundreds of online resources available teaching you the of HTML or CSS, and, if you need something slightly more advanced e.commerce, then you can learn PHP or MySQL. They are incredibly simple to learn, and you could have your own website or e-commerce site up and running within a few months. That's how easy it is. If 1 + 1 = 2, then you can learn to code. If not, then maybe the fast lane is not your correct path. As a fast lane entrepreneur, I will rely on an outside source for something that I can directly control. Never sell yourself short, no matter how high the obstacle. I wrote a ridiculously bad post on this thread about a year ago. It's back a few pages. Here's one of the things that I said. A lot of time has passed since I wrote that comment, and it's still true. I actually took the time to learn the ins and outs of code. And here's the verdict. 12 months ago I was literally handicapped with what I could personally do to my site. I always had to pay someone to do the work for me, and over time, paying people gets expensive and sometimes just as time-consuming. Learning the ins and outs of code has made a huge difference in my life. For example, for the longest time I wanted to put a statistics feature onto the profiles of my users. To do this I would need to give the users the ability to dynamically update their stats on the profile, save the data in a database, then call the data back onto the front end. 12 months ago, I would have thought that this is an overly complicated task. I would have spent 1 week creating a mock-up, and then I would have probably overpaid for the work. I created the feature in about 1 night, then I realized that I could enhance the visualization of the data with some jQuery ... plus one more night. It turns out that the task was actually very simple to complete. How I learned: most people seem to go straight to the education and tutorials. That's great and all. Udemy always provides a lot of great courses. I learned the basics by diving into the code myself and playing with the code until I figured it out. I rebuilt web pages about 100x over, restructured databases, rewrote PHP code, and made huge mistakes along the way. My advice is to have someone build a site for you and then learn on your own site with the help of some tutorials in your spare time. And of course, I still believe that the key to everything is sales and traffic. But I'm not going to lie. 1 year later, knowing way more about how to code has made a huge difference. Also, consider your goals. I had no intention of ever learning. Sitting at a computer for hours is the last thing that I want to do. I learned out of necessity. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. It's easy to say don't learn, but put yourself in a position where you need to do whatever you can to survive, and you'll see that your opinions about everything will change. It's called hacking, and it's the best way to learn. Good job. The good thing with the proliferation of the internet is that there are so many online resources. A lot of the code that you need you don't even need to write. Copy and paste is a coder's best friend. This exactly how I built most of my site's functionality. Besides having the functionality that I need now, I learned a lot and am much more competent in speaking with real programmers now to take my business to the next level. I am so glad I learned to outsource. That makes sense to me. It can be daunting if you don't know zilch and you're operating on a shoestring budget. You could get screwed if you're the brainchild of the startup. Trust me, I've had this experience. Left out in the middle of a project by my tech partners. Had to source for money to get it completed by outsourcing. Now, what I do is outsource and have my tech team on timelines. I'll learn a little about the code you want to use in the tech startup. I think it really depends on the person. Some people can learn something and become great at it, and some people just don't like relying on others. Some people just aren't interested in learning programming, and that's cool. But saying that it's ridiculous to learn how to code because someone else can do it for you is like saying it's ridiculous to learn a second language because you can always get someone to translate for you. I think it depends on the industry you're in or want to be in, but generally speaking, for most industries it will be vital to at the very least understand coding. Kids are learning this in school right now. It will be their second language. And even if you had nothing to do with coding in your business, it might still be useful to at the very least be able to communicate, even if on a basic level, with coders you hired. Whether you want to specialize in it is a whole other story. I don't think it would hurt to learn to code. Should it? It can only help. Here. I know this post is primarily focused on learning to code, and it is exactly it where I sit every evening slogging away with HTML and CSS after my 9-to-5 job. I will get to it. My concern for any potential new entrepreneurs, young and old, was somewhat triggered by some of the potentially damaging comments listed above, that could impact your life or business. For example, outsourcing all accountancy because you don't want to learn the math. What utter bullshit. FYI, my background is mechanical engineering, 10 years experience design and product management of high-tech systems or products for use is chemical processing facilities where standards exceed that of semiconductor industry. For those of you who want to skip the process and hire people to do everything for you without even at least learning the fundamentals of every part of your business. Of course, there are always success stories out there, good on you, but there are also horror stories. So what happens, dear people? Who? Not the people who did the work for you or with whom you contracted the work to. You or your business is accountable. Please go ahead and enjoy. If you have not got a fundamental grasp on what is needed in every aspect of your business, you are at risk. So as a startup, I will continue to build coding practice into my extensive learning program. Why? Because I will own my shit. Because I am not scared of a challenge the size of a mountain. Because when the time comes to pull the trigger, my competitors already with billions in their banks will have a hard time keeping up, rather than simply copying and taking the idea from me. I am in no way saying that I aim to be or will be a coding expert in the end, and I fully expect by next year, or most likely by Christmas, that the detailed level of coding knowledge that I have practiced will be gone and lost forever. What is most critical and most importantly though, the principles of coding will never be forgotten. The big picture view role on Steve Jobs can always be applied to hiring, firing, concept generation, and understanding and challenging other people's work. We are, or at least I am, not here to get rich quick and dirty. We are here to, of course, pick your battles. I will learn the financial aspects when my product is ready to make money. I will learn the legal aspects when the product is tested and ready for manufacture or release, and I will learn marketing when I have my product on the market. Actually, that is how I fill my breaks for now, because the platform of my business is web or app-based. The focus is on learning that, thus minimizing my risk, financial input and time to launch. I will be investing purely from my work income, and therefore when I eventually hire someone to develop the website and app, it will be done effectively and precisely based on the detailed and clear specification I give to a programmer. If you don't want to do your mathematics, your coding, your market research, your product analytics, etc., that is fine, it is your choice. I cannot see a lower risk path for how to give value and sustain that value for as many people on this planet as possible, only to have it take away or removed, or to lose my grip on the market share. Additionally, if it all goes tits up, the process is established and the next product will be on the market in a fraction of the time. Some light reading to underpin the risks for non-technical startups, or for non-technical leadership. Rant over. Great take, my friend, pretty much reflects my way of things as well. I don't want to be an expert in everything, but it is nice to have rudimentary knowledge on many things, so when it comes time to hire someone, you're not completely in the dark and at their mercy. This is why people get screwed at auto repair shops. They know nothing to counteract a bullshitter. I could be wrong, but I picked up a lot of valuable resources along my journey. ATSD at the same time, I'm technically inclined, and dreamed of being a tech peony throughout HS and majored software deving UNI. I taught HTML5 and CSS3 in a West African code camp, where I found small business owners, mostly baby boomers, looking to cut corners by building sites themselves. I found it wouldn't be worth the time to help them up and around the learning curve. Like if you can code. Great post. I agree that it's very difficult to hire for something you don't know anything about. One alternative to learning to code yourself would be to partner with a technical co-founder. But then, how do you vet a technical co-founder when you don't know anything about coding? I'm having this dilemma now with product engineering. I know next to nothing about engineering, but I'm having to work with engineers and contract it out. I've been riding the struggle bus lately, trying to learn as much as I can about the process so that I can make a good hire when the time comes to bring someone in full-time. Product engineering is my day-to-day business amp. If you have any questions, just PM me and I'll do my best to help you out. Don't learn how to code. Then, trash your $1 million ideas because you go ask for a prototype and you get a 100K quote, which you are not willing to or can't pay. Also, don't know the basics, and become one of those unicorn entrepreneurs that want to make Facebook in 2 months with a graduate and his nephew. What do you suggest for those that don't have the cash to outsource? I give you a yes. I call that the wish for perfection. But, often in my life that wish for perfection prevented my to get in action. In the 1980s I learned SDH like basic than while studying Pascal. As I never found someone that could serve my interest for the steps from 1 or 0 to Pascal or so, I lost the interest in coding. I had no need for it though. Also I had my best grades there. It's the same as with domestic heating, always quits on Christmas. That's why I conserve my heating units. And it continues still, 7 years later. Imagine if the people debating this topic had gotten to work instead of debating about one or the other, and instead just chose a path and stuck with it. Well, do you think that are the same people? Or do you think nowadays problems of people are really different? Could you elaborate a bit more?